Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this meeting of the Governance Committee on Tuesday, the 18th of March. My name is Councillor Peter Gabbett, and I'm the chair for this meeting. Before we start this evening, I would just like to outline some housekeeping rules. There are no planned fire alarms, so if it does sound, please leave via the emergency exits. Can I request that all mobile phones are kept on silent or switched off? Thank you. And members of the committee are attending in person here at the Civic Centre. Other members of the council may also dial into the meeting via Teams to observe and or participate in the meeting. Apologies for the high-pitched squeaking. Please note the meeting is live streamed on YouTube. The web link for this can be found on the council's website. Members on Teams are asked to keep their microphone on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. And could I remind members to unmute themselves once they've finished speaking to enable this meeting to proceed smoothly. And before we start, please may we have introductions around the room. So we'll start from the left and go around that way. So that's you, Chris.
Good evening. I'm Chris Moister. I'm the Council's Director of Governance and Monitoring Officer.
Good evening, Councillor Bretherton, representing Walton Liddell West.
Evening, James Gleeson, Councillor for Count Green, Gregson Lane.
Evening, Councillor Emma Stevens for Bamber Bridge East.
Dawn Highton, Head of Audit and Risk.
Jackie Murray, Senior Auditor.
Hugh Maguire, Senior Risk and Insurance Officer.
Margaret Smith, Councillor for New Longton and Hutt East.
Good evening, Councillor David Shaw, representing Howick and Priory in Penwortham and substituting for Councillor Ange Turner.
Claire Gornall, Democratic Services Officer.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. We'll now commence with the agenda. So first item is apologies. Claire, could you confirm if we've had any?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we've had apologies from Councillor Angela Turner, who is substituted for by David Shaw, and we have apologies from Councillor Wesley Roberts. Thank you.
Thank you. And second on the agenda is declarations of interest. Does anyone have any interest to declare? Oh, perfect. Item 3. Members are advised that this item can be found on page 5 of the main agenda. Does anyone have any further comments on the minutes of the 21st of January's meeting? Can I have a proposer, please? And then a seconder, and all those in favour? Any abstentions? And the minutes have been confirmed as approved and signed a copy later. Item 4. Members are advised that this item can be found starting page 9 of the main agenda, and I will invite Dawn Highton, Head of Audit and Risk, to present the item, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the report that you have before you today sets out the audit work that we're due to complete in between April and September. This is a usual report that we bring every 6 months to the committee, and we've gone through the process of consulting with directors and doing our own risk assessment and then approving the plan with the senior management team before it comes to the committee for final approval. So the plan is attached at Appendix A, and it clearly shows the link as well between the work that we're doing and the corporate objectives and risks that the council is facing. We've agreed as well that we will continue to support South Ribble Leisure, and we will provide a further 75 audit days to that company. And again, whilst we don't report the outcome of each audit engagement, the overall review of the leisure companies will be included in the annual report that comes to the committee in May. Our resource has now stabilised. You'll remember that we had a retirement of one of our auditors, and we recruited successfully to another trainee post. So the resource is now stabilised and we're not anticipating any further changes, though I should touch wood at that. And again, we are not proposing any changes to our performance indicators for the forthcoming year. One change we are proposing to make is that to our assurance ratings. So at the minute, we have the 4 assurance ratings that are set out under paragraph 18. And we benchmarked with other local authorities what their assurance ratings were. And we also took into consideration that there was guidance issued by this special interest group of SITFA setting out assurance ratings. And that they gave a range of benefits if we all standardised the assurance ratings that we used. So it's been agreed with the corporate governance group, the officer group, that we would amend our assurance ratings from April onwards, and they're set out, both the assurance ratings and the definition. So there's been a change to both, and they're set out under paragraph 20. You will notice that the full assurance has been removed, but I honestly can say in 20 plus years of auditing, I think I've used it once. So I don't think it'll be a massive change. As requested at the last meeting, we've provided an update on the actions from limited assurance reports. And as you can see, of the 79 agreed actions, 55 have been implemented. So we're on a 70% implementation rate. So at this stage, that's good progress. That's where we're expecting to be. The remainder are in progress. So again, we're confident that they will be slightly delayed, some of them, but majority will be implemented within a short time scale. So as I said, the plan is attached to Appendix A, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Dawn. I appreciate that. And it's good to hear about the progress. So I'll invite members if they've got any questions. Councillor James Gleeson.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the figures you've got there that you've just told us about on that table. At the bottom, you've got the 79 of agreed actions, the implemented ones, and then we've got some that are in progress. What are the not yet due ones?
So when we issue the final report, when we've completed the review and we agree the action plan with the auditee, there will be set dates by which the actions are due to be implemented by, and the not yet due are the actions where are future dates.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I read the change, and I think they're very good, actually. They seem to put more meat on the bone as to actually, particularly the final one where it's got to do something immediately. So I thought that was an excellent move. Just a bit going back to this chart where we've got the actions and that were in place, particularly for fuel management, because we were concerned about that report at the time, and the officer concerned at that time couldn't come to the meeting, which was unfortunate. But there was 18, so there's quite a number to be implemented. 9 have already been implemented. There's none waiting. 5 are due at some point in time, and there's a 4 missing, if you're with me, because we've got 18, 9. 9, we're right. There's 9 still to be done. It seems to be taking an awful long time because some of them would just seem to be fundamental. Is it to do with that system that they were trying to implement?
No, we agreed. I think the report was issued in October, and we the more pressing actions we agreed had to be implemented before the end of December, which were done. There were then a couple that were due, I think maybe about a further 4 or 5 that were due to be implemented by the end of January, and they were the ones that have been implemented. Where you say there's some missing, of the 5, so 5 are due to be implemented by the end of March. So I've obviously followed up at the end of February. So the 5 of those 9 are due to be implemented by the end of March, and they're the ones I've discussed with the head of service and are on track. The remainder, it was a long-term solution really in relation to fuel cards, which required a much bigger piece of work. So the more pressing issues in terms of management of the fuel are all being implemented quite quickly, but it was looking at how fuel cards were used, and they were the longer term actions.
The fuel card issue was actually, to me, quite a serious thing, because there was no real control at that time and didn't seem to be control. And I'm surprised that it's going to be a long-term thing. I would have thought it was more pressing than that.
What they've done is they've split it up into two different actions. So there's the immediate, like you say, controlling the current use, but then there was a much bigger review of how they're being used and what other alternatives in place. And that's the longer term action that's like you say, in place, that we agreed the longer term dates for, because the immediate control issues were being rectified.
Do we have a timescale on the long term?
I'd have to go back and double check the report, but I can certainly come back to you tomorrow with those dates.
You mentioned South Ribble Leisure, and we've got 75 days. I assume I think we've asked this question before, but I can't remember the answer, that we actually get paid for that work. And we get an opinion, apart from the fact that it is an arm's length company of South Ribble Borough Council. And there is, I think, is it 2 directors or 3? 3. Is governance satisfied that just an opinion is adequate for such a large operation that is actually, with, albeit arm's length, part of South Ribble?
I don't think that would lie with Dawn at this moment. I think that would lie with the council as a whole to make that decision. On that question, whether the opinion is enough, it wouldn't lie with. I don't think Dawn could answer that on behalf.
Where would we take that question to then?
I'll bring Chris in to answer.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question that's been raised by both the Chair of Scrutiny and the Chair of Governance with me as to the assurance that can be taken by the council into how the company is being operated. And of course, there is a split responsibility, because the way the company has been set up is the shareholders are the executive members of the company, and they hold the board to account, and the main point of contact with the council, between the council and the company from a member point of view, is the executive member with responsibility for leisure. So there is a scrutiny involvement there to make sure that the company are delivering the outputs that the council are asking them to deliver. And then there is the question that you've raised this evening around the governance environment within the company and how that's operating, which of course is more of a governance function, but there's a clear overlap between the two. So what they've asked me to do before I finish is to do a protocol between scrutiny and governance with a view to setting up some sort of joint arrangement between scrutiny and governance to get that kind of review of the two elements together. So that's how it's going to be approached, and how the council will be able to take that independent view on it away from the shareholder management.
So that you'll be doing that before the end of March, I presume? Yeah. And when will that start to operate?
Well, that'll be a matter for council to decide. Because I will do it as I think it is the appropriate way to do it, and of course there will have to be then some consideration by members as to whether that meets their needs. But I can't see any reason why it couldn't start next year. In the next financial year.
We'll look forward to presumably it will at some point raise its head through governance, and we'll have a look at it. And
I think it would have to come to both governance and scrutiny committees, because I think both would have to agree that that's the appropriate way to do it. It's about trying to balance the level of scrutiny, for want of a better word, of the company and not doing things twice when there's a clear overlap between the two. So we need to make sure we've got arrangements in place that meet the needs of both committees, but also aren't overly taxing on officers who might have to attend multiple meetings if we separate things out.
Thank you. Are there any other questions about the report at all? Any questions from members of the public or other councillors in the gallery? Then I'll ask Members are asked to approve the internal audit plan and the associated indicators. Can I ask for a proposer? Thanks, Margaret, and a seconder. And all those in favour? Unanimous. Brilliant. Moving on to item number 5. Members are advised this item can be found starting on the main agenda, pages 17 to 40, and I'll invite Jackie Murray, Senior Auditor, to present this report. Thank you.
So this report provides details of the global internal audit standards in the UK public sector, which are coming into effect on the 1st of April. We provided details of the global internal audit standards, which we'll abbreviate to GAIS going forward because it's a bit of a mouthful. We've got the application note as to how that should be applied within the UK public sector. And we also have SIPVA's Code of Practice for the governance of the internal audit within the local government environment. We mentioned at previous meetings that these new arrangements were coming into place, and from a UK public sector perspective, we've been waiting on SIPVA to provide us with the necessary documentation as to how we're going to apply these global standards within the UK public sector environment. So there is some fundamental changes within the new standards, and they're split into 5 domains, which sets out very detailed criteria and specifies how it expects us to comply and the kind of evidence that we need to be able to provide to show compliance. The application note gives specific interpretations where we would find it difficult for the public sector to conform to a global standard. So it gives us further clarification about what we can do to provide evidence to show that we're complying. And the code as well also gives additional interpretation for specifically in relation to domain 3, which is the governing of the internal audit function. So we've provided you with a copy of the code at Appendix A, and we've also provided you with an action plan at Appendix B, which gives you an idea of the kind of tasks that will be undertaken internally to make sure that we are a compliant service going forward. The action plan has been set in such a way that it meets the needs of the audit cycle. So when we're bringing the plan and we're giving you updates going forward, it will make sure we're compliant with the new standards. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them on the report.
Thank you very much for presenting the report. Does anybody have any questions on the report? Perfect then. No. Any questions from members of the public? No. And then, members are asked to consider and comment on the report, action plan and the SIPVA Code of Practice for the governance of internal audit in the UK public sector. And this is just to simply note the report. Thank you very much. Item number 6. Members are advised that this item can be found on the main agenda, pages 41 to 58. I'll invite Kerry Maguire, Senior Risk and Insurance Officer, to present this report, please. Thank you.
It was just really that just to let members know that the risk strategy has been reviewed, the risk management strategy. It was previously presented to the Governance Committee in January 24, and it will be looking to have an annual review, and then it'll be refreshed and brought to the Governance Committee each March. The main basis of the strategy is to outline how the council is going to manage its risk at all levels across the organisation. When we've looked through the strategy, there's been very little that's needed changing. There was just a few tweaks to some of the wording, which has been highlighted in red. One main element was just to change some of the terminology. So we was referring to risks as the gross risk, and we've added in inherent risk as well, because that aligns to how risk management is the terminology used in the system and the guidance and training that is given to staff. Some of the other changes that we've implemented to the risk management strategy was just aligning with the new corporate approach and branding, so to make sure that all policies, etc., are in use the same font and font size, and to align it to the clear guidelines for best practice so that the documents are easy to read. We've added in a category to do with cyber security. It's been added in as a category for people to select within the risk management system, so that when people are applying different categories to the risks that each services face, cyber security has been included. I think it's always been a risk that's been recognised for some time, but more increasingly at local authority level, that risk is becoming more prominent, and having the opportunity for services to categorise risks provides the service and the council with enhanced reporting mechanisms so that we can drill down and sort of give a bigger picture of the different types of risks that the council is facing. Just as wanted to highlight to members as well that risk management has seen some significant improvements over the last 12 months. There's been a lot of work across both councils and shared services with audit and risk teams working directly with services to support them to review their risks in more detail and to support them to make sure that the risk scores are more aligned with the type of risk that the council is managing, and we are seeing a much more improvement of the actual quality of the content that's contained within the risk registers across the council at all levels. Just happy to take any questions if members have got questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for presenting that report. So yeah, do any members have any questions on the report at all? Councillor Smith.
It's not actually a question, it's more just a comment. The training session a few weeks ago that we went to on risk management, I thought was excellent. It really gave me a better understanding of risk management, which I think isn't always easy to do when you're on the outside. And the little exercise we conducted at the end I thought was excellent because it really gave us something to think about. So well done for that. And I'm glad we put cyber security in as an extra risk, because I do think it is coming much more to the fore now. So thank you, Kerry.
Thank you.
Yep, Councillor Shaw.
So just as a substitute member trying to catch myself up. So you mentioned gross risk. Is that inherent risk?
Yes.
Okay, so
yeah.
Sorry, just put your microphone.
Both terms are used. So originally in the risk management strategy, it referred to gross risk, which is the same as inherent. But when services are looking at the system, it refers to inherent risk. So we just wanted to make sure that both terms are referenced in the strategy so that there's no confusion. And we just added in a little bit more of a description.
Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you. I'm just looking at, I'll just pick the cybersecurity one as an example. If somebody's going through assessing risks and they come up with, yes, we have a cybersecurity risk, they have training to be able to identify the risks, I guess?
Well, I think it depends who's marking it as a cyber risk. So I think some will be obvious cyber risks by the nature of what they're defining. But if somebody's highlighted something that's not a cyber risk, there is an element of that can be, somebody can look at it and check whether that's applicable to that particular risk. We do have a cyber digital officer that works with the council, so that he would be a point of support or someone to refer if someone wasn't too sure whether it fell as a cyber risk. But I suppose anything really where we've got data, so a lot of services have got their own standalone systems, so they should really be being flagged up potentially because of loss of data.
Any more questions from members? No, perfect. Any questions from members of the public? No. Yeah. And members are asked to approve the strategy set out in Appendix A. Can I have a proposal, please? Thanks. And seconder. Thank you. And then all those in favour? Brilliant, unanimous. Perfect. Item number 7. Members are advised that this item can be found on the agenda supplement pages 3 to 6, and I'll invite Chris Moyse, the Director of Governance, to present this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this report comes out of a recommendation from External Audit, who proposed that to ensure transparency in relation to the number of waivers that have been issued, that is be reported to Governance Committee. Members who've been on the Council for a few years will remember that waivers used to be reported to Executive Cabinet, and when because initially there were quite a few taking place, largely due to the COVID issue and the need to move quickly on matters. And there were some concerns about the number of waivers that were being issued. When the numbers fell, because processes were re-established after the pandemic, members were happy for that reporting to stop. But External Audit did suggest that from the point of view of transparency, not questioning the process, that it is reported somewhere. So you will see from the table that we're reporting from the period from September 24 to February 25, so 6-month period. And in that period, 8 waivers were granted, and those are detailed in the table at paragraph 9. In fact, you can probably argue that some of them were listed as waivers, but perhaps as they weren't actually a departure from the Council's contract procedure rules, a waiver wasn't actually necessary. And I point at the one from October, the legal services one, perhaps rather sensitively on my part, for the appointment of the legal software. We actually used a framework for that, which is a compliant contract procedure rules method of procurement. But yeah, happy to take any questions on the report, Chair. But certainly 8 waivers in a 6-month period is not out of kilter with other authorities, and in fact is significantly less than most are granting.
Thank you, Chris. Is there anybody got any questions on the report at all?
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Bretherton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just looking at page 4, the table that you referred to, and the amounts involved. I noticed in February, Property Services urgent works to the roof at Vernon Carrow Sports Club, which is near my ward. Even though there's been a waiver and we've approved it, do we still get competitive quotes? So where it says urgent, I'm assuming we don't just go to the first person that comes along, and we do get competitive quotes in before we make a decision.
I can't speak to this one specifically. When the waiver process is, because I haven't got it in front of me, but I will have reviewed it at the time because I'm part of the approvals process for that. So in order to grant a waiver, we have to show there's special urgency outside the control of the council, or there are particular reasons why we don't have sufficient time to do a full procurement exercise. A lot of the time there is comparative information provided, and this might be through quotes, or it might be by reference to another procurement exercise that has been undertaken, and we're proposing to use a contractor who've worked for the council previously. Usually you'd have to aggregate those contracts together, but by granting a waiver, you can keep them separate. So not every time is the comparative information. It really depends on the time pressures required, it connected to the piece of work, but often there are comparators, particularly with specialist pieces of work. So a lot of the software ones, where we've granted a waiver, that is, there are these suppliers, but it's a small catchment, and there is no point in doing a larger procurement exercise, but we've approached them and these are the bids that they've given. So it is a departure, but we have tested the market. But I can't answer for that one specifically. What I would say about property is that they have developed some local frameworks so that they are looking to use moving forward. So there should be fewer and fewer waivers from property because of the frameworks that they've looked to implement.
Councillor Shaw.
I could just observe, since that's roofing work in February, I would imagine the urgency is more important than the formality, frankly.
Thanks for that. One comment I'd make, just in terms of the report, is under paragraph 7 on page 4, it lists out A, B, and C, the reasons why we could waive the contract rules. Going forward, I don't know if the committee thinks it's a good idea, but next to each item of the 8 that are waivers, is it possible to have a description of what was used, what waiver was used for that specific one? I assume that it will be on the document that's approved by officers, but I don't, and the committee doesn't see sight of that.
Yeah. Yes, Chair, I'm sure we can update the report table to reflect that.
Thanks, Chris. And Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman, for mentioning that, because I'd written exactly the same thing down, that I thought it would be a good idea to know whereabouts in the system the thing worked. And it also says that it requires the agreement of the monitoring officer, the S151, Chief Executive and Cabinet. Does it requires all of them or any combination of?
Yeah, so you'll remember that we had some challenges in relation to the use of waivers. So we actually established an online process. So it goes through more people than that in the long run, because it actually goes through the head of service and director first before it then comes through to the statutory officers. And then the final sign off is by executive cabinet member relevant to that particular area. And a lot of the time, these are also supported by executive member decisions. So they're not, the waiver doesn't empower the award of the contract. There still often needs to be a decision to do it, and there will be reference in that report as well that there's a waiver been used in order to identify the contractor.
I think that's good, following on, because some while ago there was an awful lot of waivers going through, and it was very unsettling, I think, for members to see so much of that going through almost on the nod. I'm just a bit unclear about the Vernon Carus one. Do we actually own the building at Vernon Carus now?
I will answer and then come back to you again, but yes, we do, and it's on lease to the club and occupied by them. But yeah, I think it came over, and I think it happened as I was just starting or just before, as part of the wider arrangements in relation to the lodge. Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
Realise that the club premises came over at the same time. I remember the lodge coming over. I didn't realise that the club house had come over as well.
Oh, thank you very much for that. Have we got any other questions? Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you. Just one more quick question. Paragraph item 10, it says that we should note that the number of waivers is limited. Are you referring that there's only been a limited amount in this report, or there is an actual limit on the number that they can?
Sorry, no, yeah, its number is limited. I mean, it's working out at just over one a month, which, given sometimes we have to act quite quickly, as Councillor Shaw mentioned about, some of these urgent works as a result of the storms over Christmas, is not a surprise when sometimes we need to act promptly. But because we're recognising that and we want to be as compliant as we can be, that's why we've established the local frameworks, because that's a compliant method of contracts award.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? No, I'd just like to highlight, obviously, that's sort of an example of good governance there, where there's been lots of waivers. We've put in measures of looking at it having sign off from multiple members, and obviously they're slowly reducing. So, no, it's good to see. I will then just note the members are just asked to note that report, and we'll move on to item 8. Members are advised that this item can be found on the agenda supplement document, which is pages 7 to 26. And again, I'll invite Chris Moyster, Director of Governance, to present this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a document that comes back almost annually, although it didn't come back last year. So although it's not a legal requirement, it is good practice under SIP for guidance to have a local code of corporate governance. And the purpose of the document is to demonstrate how we meet the principles set out in the SIP for guidance. The document will be familiar to members because it's one that, like I say, we do try and present annually. And the purpose of it there's two parts to the document. So there's the introductory section, which gives some text and explanation as to what the purpose is, and then there's a table at the back of the document, which is on the appendix, the second appendix, Appendix B, which actually lists what the principles are, breaks them down into series of achievable statements that CIPRA have identified, and then identifies the evidence that we use to demonstrate our compliance. Members will see that some of the phraseology in the evidence is intentionally non-specific, for want of a better phrase. So instead of identifying individual policy documents, which could change in year, we identify suites of policies that demonstrate that overall compliance. That table has not changed from the last time members approved it. It is the document against which both external audit and internal audit will test when they do audits in relation to these matters. So it is an important document from that point of view for it to be correct. But yeah, I'm happy to take any questions on it, Chair.
Any questions from members? Perfect. We'll move on that. So members are asked to approve the updated local code of corporate governance. And I have a proposer. Thank you, Margaret. And a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Redfern. Is it rushing there?
Yeah.
And can have a show of hands for 4, please. Thank you. So all in favour. So the decision confirmed. And item 9, please note that this has been withdrawn pending a new date for the Constitution Task Group. And the proposed date is Wednesday, the 2nd of April at 6 p.m. Happy with that, Wednesday 2nd? Yeah, perfect. And then thank you for attending, and I now close the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.